Hey, so in this video we are going to discuss about classification of statements. So we can actually categorize the statements based on three different factors. So let's see what are these three different factors and let's see the classification. So the first factor is based on the type of action they perform. Okay, so depending on what type of action the statement is going to perform, we can categorize the statement into two categories. The first category is called as non-executable statement and the second category is called as executable statement. See, right now just focus on these names. Okay, I'm going to take you to the VS Code and I'm going to explain you what are these different categories, so don't worry about them. So based on type of action they perform, we can categorize the statement into two categories: executable statement and non-executable statement. Okay, maybe you are able to get some hint with the help of these names. Okay, executable statement, non-executable statement, we are going to discuss about them, so don't worry at all. Okay, then we can also categorize the statements based on number of constituent statement in them. Okay, now this seems little interesting, like statement is the smallest entity, this is what we are saying, but then what is this number of constituent statement? Like, this is little weird, but again we are going to discuss about this as well on the VS Code. So based on number of constituent statement, we can divide or we can categorize statements into two categories. First category is called as simple statement and the second category is called as compound statement. Okay, simple statement and compound statement. And finally we have an interesting factor based on which we can divide the statement. It is basically based on their role. Okay, so based on the role they perform in the programming, we can divide the statements into four different categories. Actually there are few more categories that we can create in this factor, but I have kind of ignored them because they are not that much used nowadays. Okay, so the high level categories based on their role are declaration and definition statement. See, we have already discussed about these kind of statements. We have created the variables, we have assigned some value to them. So those statements are nothing but declaration and definition statement. Again, we are going to discuss about it in the VS Code. Then we have null statement. Okay, this is something new. Then we have decision control statement and then we have iteration statement. So these are the high level four categories or subcategories that we can have based on role of the statement. Now let's quickly jump onto the VS Code and let's quickly understand all these categories in much more detail. Okay, so now I'm on the VS Code. Now let's understand different types of statement or the classification of statement in much more detail. So the first category is based on the action that the statement is going to perform. So based on the action, we can divide the statement in two categories: non-executable statement and executable statement. Now let's first understand what is non-executable statement. See, a non-executable statement is a statement which is supposed to help the compiler, which is made or which is written to help the compiler. For that statement, machine code is not generated. Now what do we mean by machine code? See, whenever we write any program and then whenever we compile the program, for our instructions that we write in C++, some code is going to be generated, right, which is going to be executed by the processor whenever you give that file to the processor for execution. So this is called as machine code, right? It's a binary code that is getting generated. So non-executable statements are just helping statements that just help the compiler to maybe to understand the program or maybe for different things. Okay, so non-executable statements are just for helping the compiler. For them, machine code is not generated. And very important thing, we can write non-executable statement outside of the function body as well. So let me tell you what is the function body. See, we know from the beginning that this main is a function, right? And this thing is called as function body of the main function or body of the main function. So outside of the function body, see, whenever we'll go to the functions module, you will get more idea about this, but right now just remember this is very important. See, outside of this function body, you can only write non-executable statements. See, for example, over here we are writing these two statements, right? So these two statements are written outside of the function body. These statements are non-executable statement. So always remember, you can write non-executable statements outside of the function body, or I'll say only non-executable statements can be written outside of the function body. You cannot write executable statements outside of the function body. Okay, executable statements needs to be written inside the function body. They cannot be written outside of the function body. Now let's understand what type of statements comes under non-executable category. So statements like, let me give you some examples. Statements like this one. This is called as preprocessor directive. See, the statements which start with hash, they are called as preprocessor directive. They're just for guiding the compiler. For example, in this case, we are telling the compiler that we need IOStream header file. So include that header file for us. That is the meaning of hash include. For this statement, machine code will not be generated. This action is going to be performed when the compilation process is in progress. So for such kind of statements, machine code is not generated, but those statements will be used by the compiler during the compilation process. There are few more types of statements or few more statements which comes under non-executable category. For example, function prototype declaration. Now we don't know what is function prototype declaration because we haven't discussed about it yet, but function prototype declaration, global variable declaration, these are some examples, some more examples for non-executable statement. Okay, now let's quickly move on to the executable statement. The executable statements are the statements for which the machine code is going to be generated. These are the statements which are actually going to execute. Let's take one example. For example, if you write int a is equal to 10 followed by a is equal to a plus b, or a is equal to a plus 20, something like this. In this case, a is equal to a plus 20. This is an executable statement because this statement is going to need some processing. This statement actually needs to go to the processor and needs to be executed. That's why this statement is called as executable statement, and for this statement machine code is going to be generated. So what is an executable statement? So it is a kind of a statement for which machine code is going to be generated, and this statement is actually going to go to the processor for processing. So statements like assignment expressions, or statements like some arithmetic expressions, some conditions. So see, we haven't discussed about the conditional statements yet, or looping statement or iteration statements yet, but such kind of statements comes under executable category. So always remember, the statements which are just for helping the compiler, those are non-executable statement, and you can write non-executable statements outside of the function body. And the statements which are, which are actually going to execute, for whom the machine code is going to be generated, such kind of statements are called as executable statement. And executable statements needs to be written inside the function body. Let me give you one example. See, global variable declaration is one example of non-executable statement. Now let me show you how we can create a global variable. See, we have a different model in which we are going to discuss about the global variable and all that stuff. Right now I'm just giving you an example. See, for example, if you write something like this, int global, let's say, is equal to 20. See, this is a valid statement. This is called as global variable declaration, and you can write it absolutely over here because it is a non-executable statement. Global variable declaration is a non-executable statement. But if you try to do something like this over here, for example, if you try to do global is equal to, or I'll say global plus equal to, let's say 30. Now in this case, whenever you are writing global plus equal to 30, you are trying to perform some arithmetic operation. This is an arithmetic expression, right? See, you can see that we are getting an error. Why we are getting an error? Because this is an executable statement, and executable statement cannot be written outside of the function body. So always remember, executable statement needs to be written inside the function body. See, this is the function body starting from curly brace open, ending with curly brace close. This is a function body. In this function body, you can write your executable statements. You cannot write them outside of the function body. I hope now it's clear to you what is executable statement and what is non-executable statement. For executable statement, machine code is going to be generated. For non-executable statement, machine code is not going to be generated. All right. Now let's move to the next category of the statements, that is based on number of constituent statement. So based on number of constituent statement, we can divide the statements into two categories. First category is called as simple statement, and the second category is called as compound statement. Now this is very easy. See, in simple statement, we have only one statement. Now let me give you one example. See, this is a simple statement because it is a single statement. This is also a simple statement because again, this is a single statement. So whenever you have a single line, a simple expression followed by semicolon, it's called as a simple statement. Now what is this compound statement? See, compound statement is nothing but group of simple statements, Actually, what we can do is we can group multiple simple statements together and we can make a block. We can make a block of multiple statements and it is called as compound statement. How we can do it? See, for example, you have to start a block with curly brace open and curly brace close. Okay, so this indicates that it's a compound statement. So you have to write curly brace open and curly brace close, and in this curly brace open and curly brace close you can write multiple statements, multiple simple statements. So I'll just move these statements in this block, and this entire block, see this block which starts from here and ends here, this entire block is called as compound statement. Now you might be having this question in your mind that what is use of compound statement? You will get more idea about this when we will move ahead in this model. Right now don't worry about it. Right now just remember, you can club multiple simple statements together in curly brace open and curly brace close. This curly brace open and curly brace close is called as compound statement. It is also called as a block. Now always remember, you don't need to give semicolon after the compound statement. It's not necessary to give semicolon after the compound statement, but optionally you can give. I mean, if you want to give semicolon after compound statement, it's fine, but syntax wise you don't need to give semicolon after the compound statement. So I hope now you are clear on simple and compound statement. What is a simple statement? It's a single statement. And what is a compound statement? It's a group of multiple simple statements which is enclosed by curly brace open and curly brace close. That is it is. Now let's move to the third category of the statement, which is based on role that the statement is going to perform. So in this category we have four different types of the statement. The first type is declaration and definition statement, then we have null statement, then we have decision control statement, and then we have iteration statement. Let's start with the first one. See, we already know this type of statement, that is declaration and definition. So for example, whenever you write something like this, int a, this is nothing but declaration or definition statement. See, actually declaration and definition are different. They are two different things. You'll get more idea about it whenever we'll move ahead in this course. Right now just assume that declaration and definition are similar things. Okay, this is called as declaration or definition statement. Usually we use this statement to create a variable, to declare a variable. So this is the use of declaration or definition statement. Then we have next category, that is called as the null statement. What is a null statement? See, null statement is an empty statement. So how we can write a null statement in C++? So writing just semicolon is called as null statement. So this is called as null statement in C++. Compiler just skips execution of such kind of statement because it has no meaning. This is called as null statement. So I hope now you are clear on declaration and definition statement and null statements. Okay. Now in this module what we are going to do is we are going to discuss about decision control statements in much more detail. So I hope now you are clear on all these different categories of the statements. So let's proceed ahead in this model and let's see what are the decision statements in C++.